Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
The Godfather Part 2 wasn't just a sequel that matched its predecessor. It was a calculated act of artistic defiance that almost destroyed Francis Ford Coppola's career before it could cement his legacy. Behind the revolutionary split timeline narrative and the haunting Sicilian landscapes, the production descended into financial chaos, with studios threatening to shut down filming mid-shoot. These are 20 weird facts about The Godfather Part 2 that reveal how chaos, brilliance, and stubborn vision created cinema's only sequel to win Best Picture. Let's get into it. Fact number 1, Paramount didn't want this movie to exist. Paramount spent 2 years trying to stop Coppola from directing the sequel. After witnessing his battles, delays, and clashes during The Godfather, executives labeled him unstable. They offered the project to Elia Kazan and Martin Scorsese. Both refused. When Coppola returned, the studio planted 17 financial supervisors on set, whom he called spies in expensive suits. They reported every expense and delay. Frustrated, Coppola began holding secret 3 a.m. meetings in his hotel room, crafting scenes the studio would never approve. In the end, he made 2 films, the one Paramount thought it was getting, and the one that redefined cinematic storytelling. Fact number 2. The 2-timeline structure was an accident. Coppola originally planned separate films, Young Vito's Rise and Michael's Downfall, but neither script worked alone, one too distant, the other too cold. One night, 6 weeks before filming, Coppola cut the script into strips and rearranged them on the floor, discovering emotional parallels between the 2 stories. That 2 a.m. experiment became the film's signature crosscut structure. When Paramount demanded the old version, Coppola claimed the original pages were destroyed. They weren't. But his lie preserved a masterpiece of interwoven tragedy and legacy. Fact number 3. Al Pacino refused to play Michael as a villain. Coppola saw Michael Corleone as a monster. Pacino saw him as a tragic man. Their clash defined the set. Coppola demanded coldness. Pacino played humanity. The battle peaked during the Cuba scene. 17 takes rejected. Finally, cinematographer Gordon Willis proposed one uninterrupted shot, no direction. Pacino delivered raw fire, the take we see today. Years later, Coppola admitted Pacino was right. Michael's downfall works because he's still human. Evil without emotion is boring. Tragedy with warmth becomes unforgettable. Fact number 4, Robert De Niro learned a dead language. De Niro went beyond Italian. He learned the extinct 1917 Corleone dialect of Sicilian. His teacher, Giuseppe, an elderly immigrant from Sicily, met him 6 days a week for months, drilling not just speech but gestures, posture, and customs. De Niro's performance became so authentic that even Italian-American crew couldn't understand him. Paramount panicked and wanted subtitles. Coppola refused, insisting that emotion, not translation, was the key. The result? De Niro's performance transcended language, immersing audiences in a world that had already vanished. Fact number 5. The Dominican Republic location nearly killed the production. Cuba scenes were filmed in the Dominican Republic right amid political chaos. Riots erupted near the sets, gunfire cracked during night shoots, and U.S. officials eventually warned them to evacuate. During one tense night in the Plaza de la Cultura, real panic swept the cast. Coppola kept cameras rolling. Some of that genuine fear appears in the New Year's Eve sequence. The crew fled 2 weeks early, rewriting lost scenes back in New York. The film gained authenticity, but nearly lost its safety. Fact number 6. Marlon Brando almost appeared as a ghost. A haunting scene once showed Michael speaking to his father's spirit. Brando agreed until his lawyer demanded total creative control. Paramount refused. Brando walked. Coppola was heartbroken, but the absence inspired the film's chilling final image. Michael staring at his father's photograph, wordlessly confronting his inheritance. Years later, Brando confessed he never wanted to return. His lawyer's impossible demands were a calculated escape. Ironically, his absence gave the sequel its most powerful silence. Fact number 7. The Sicilian village was built from scratch. The 1917 Sicily sequences weren't shot in Corleone but in Forza de Gro, rebuilt entirely for the film. Production designer Dean Tavoularis recreated an entire village from archival photos, streets, facades, and cobblestones, all crafted by hand. The realism was so breathtaking that the Sicilian government wanted to preserve it as a tourist site. Tavularis refused, fearing it would cheapen the story's tragedy. Instead, locals incorporated pieces of the set into their real homes. To this day, The Godfather Part U literally lives in the walls of that town. Fact number 8, Lee Strasberg's casting changed film history. Hyman Roth was first offered to Elia Kazan as an olive branch, but he refused, saying he'd never act again. Desperate for someone who could rival Pacino's quiet power, Coppola turned to Lee Strasberg, the famed acting teacher behind generations of method actors. Strasberg had never appeared in a feature film and initially declined until Pacino personally called, urging his mentor to show students how it's really done. Strasberg agreed, delivered a chilling performance, and earned an Oscar nomination. His presence blurred the line between teaching and performing, inspiring acting coaches nationwide to step in front of the camera. After The Godfather Part II, method teachers were no longer just educators, they were potential stars. Strasberg didn't just play Hyman Roth, he redefined what it meant to live the craft. Fact number 9, the Lake Tahoe estate was Frank Sinatra's worst nightmare. The Corleone family compound at Lake Tahoe wasn't just scenic, it was a quiet jab at Frank Sinatra. The estate, Fleur du Lac, sat near Sinatra's own property. Still bitter over The Godfather's Johnny Fontaine character, a parody many believed was based on him, Sinatra loathed the films. Coppola chose Tahoe deliberately, filming in Sinatra's backyard as if to say, "This story belongs here." The singer's aides were spotted taking photos from passing cars, apparently searching for legal leverage. In response, Coppola instructed the crew to wave cheerfully at every vehicle. He even filled background scenes with extras resembling Rat Pack members, a subtle provocation later cut from the film. Sinatra never commented publicly on Part 2, but friends said he took it as a personal insult, cloaked in artful revenge. Fact number 10, the abortion conversation destroyed takes for days. The film's most shattering scene, Kay confessing she ended her pregnancy, wasn't in the script. Diane Keaton suggested it, wanting Kay to reclaim power against Michael's cold dominance. Coppola wrote the scene overnight, but shooting it broke everyone. Pacino couldn't get through a take without freezing or apologizing to Keaton. The emotional cruelty was unbearable. After multiple failed days, cinematographer Gordon Willis proposed filming it at the end of a grueling 16-hour day, when exhaustion would strip away acting barriers. That raw, depleted take is what made it into the film. The pain you see isn't performance, it's real emotional collapse. Keaton later called it her hardest scene ever. Pacino never watched it again, saying one viewing in the editing room was enough. Fact number 11. The Senate hearing was filmed in an actual courthouse. Coppola wanted realism, so he filmed Michael's Senate testimony inside a real New York courthouse, the same kind once used for organized crime hearings. The chamber's woodwork, microphones, and layout were authentic, but that accuracy backfired when retired senators and lawyers threatened lawsuits, claiming the film depicted them. Paramount's legal team scrambled to prove the scene was fictional. Then Coppola added a stroke of genius. He cast real former FBI agents as extras. These men had interrogated mobsters decades earlier and coached the actors on courtroom behaviors between takes. That lived experience bleeds into the film, the glances, the posture, the quiet tension. Those background extras weren't just playing lawmen, they were lawmen, haunting their old battleground. Fact number 12. The "I know it was you, Fredo" scene wasn't in the script. The film's most iconic line, "I know it was you, Fredo," was written the night before shooting. Originally, the confrontation was private, but Coppola realized betrayal needed witnesses. He rewrote it as a kiss in public, humiliation masked as affection. John Cazale, already frail and emotionally raw, received the pages at dawn and asked for one take. Just one. They rehearsed twice, then filmed once. That's the version in the movie. One perfect, devastating take. When it ended, Cazale quietly walked off set and sat alone for hours, refusing to speak. The heartbreak you see in his eyes wasn't rehearsed. It was the weight of finality, captured forever. Fact number 13. Paramount cut, 30 minutes the week before release, Coppola delivered a 200-minute film to Paramount. The studio demanded cuts, not because of content concerns, but because of theater scheduling. A 200-minute film meant fewer daily screenings, which meant less money. Paramount executives targeted specific scenes, extended dialogue in Sicily, additional moments of Michael's isolation, quieter character development. Coppola refused every suggestion. The standoff lasted 3 weeks, during which Paramount threatened to remove Coppola from the editing room and make cuts without him. Finally, Coppola proposed a compromise. He would personally cut 30 minutes, but Paramount executives couldn't watch the process or specify which scenes got removed. The studio reluctantly agreed. Coppola spent 6 days re-editing, but instead of cutting complete scenes, he trimmed seconds and minutes from throughout the film, a line of dialogue here, a pause there, a reaction shot elsewhere. The result, a film that felt slightly quicker but lost no essential storytelling. Years later, Coppola restored most of those cuts for television broadcasts and special editions, but he admitted the theatrical version's pace was probably stronger. Forced compromise produced better art. Fact number 14. Robert De Niro never met Marlon Brando during production. De Niro was playing a young Vito Corleone, a character Brando had immortalized just 2 years earlier. The logical approach would involve the actors meeting, discussing the character, finding common ground. It never happened, partly because of Brando's last-minute withdrawal from his planned cameo, but mostly because De Niro insisted on not meeting him. The younger actor told Coppola that meeting Brando would be creatively destructive. He'd end up imitating Brando's performance instead of creating his own interpretation of the character. De Niro studied Brando's work in the original film obsessively, watching the performance dozens of times, but always alone. He wanted to understand the character's essence, not mimic the actor's choices. This decision created one of cinema's most fascinating parallels. Two actors playing the same character across 50 years, connected by study and intention, but never by direct collaboration. When Brando finally saw Part 2 at a private screening, he reportedly told someone that De Niro's performance made him jealous. The younger actor had found dimensions in Vito that Brando wished he'd discovered himself. Fact number 15. The Cuban Revolution scenes used real newsreel footage. Those chaotic sequences of Castro's revolution, overtaking Havana mixed fictional performances with authentic historical footage. Coppola obtained newsreel material from 1958, actual documentation of the revolution, and wove it into his stage scenes, but this created legal and ethical complications. Some of the newsreel footage showed real people, Cuban citizens, government officials, revolutionaries, in documentary contexts. Using that footage in a fictional narrative about fictional mobsters potentially violated those individuals' rights. Paramount's legal team investigated for months, trying to identify people visible in the archival footage and secure releases. They abandoned the effort after realizing it was impossible. Many of the individuals had either died or disappeared during Cuba's political upheaval. Instead, Paramount set aside money in an escrow account specifically for potential lawsuits from anyone who recognized themselves in the film. No lawsuits ever materialized, but that escrow account remained active for 15 years. The ethical question lingered. Did using real suffering as background for fictional crime drama honor history or exploit it? Coppola never fully answered that question, admitting years later that his artistic ambitions might have overshadowed his ethical obligations. Fact number 16. John Cazale was dying during the entire production. What audiences didn't know while watching Cazale's heartbreaking performance, as Fredo, was that the actor was battling terminal illness throughout filming. Cazale had been diagnosed shortly before production began, but insisted on fulfilling his commitment. He told almost no one. Pacino knew, Coppola knew, and Meryl Streep knew because she and Cazale had become close. Everyone else remained unaware. The production schedule was quietly rearranged to film all of Cazale's scenes early in the shoot before his condition deteriorated. Some of his final scenes, including the fishing trip where Fredo is taken away, were among the first sequences filmed. Cazale's physical decline is visible if you watch carefully. His face becomes gaunter, his movements more careful, but his performance never weakened. If anything, his awareness of his own mortality added devastating authenticity to Fredo's vulnerability and desperation. Cazale completed all his scenes. The film wrapped in June 1974. John Cazale passed away in March 1978, having appeared in only 5 feature films during his brief career. All 5 were nominated for Best Picture. His final performance remains his most unforgettable. Fact number 17. The film's violence created real-world consequences. After Part 2 became a cultural phenomenon, federal law enforcement documented an unexpected trend. Organized crime families started imitating the movie. Not the original clans the Corleones were based on, but younger members of established crime families who'd grown up watching Coppola's films. FBI wiretaps recorded mobsters quoting dialogue from the movie during actual criminal activity. During one recorded conversation, a capo in New Jersey used phrases from Michael's Senate testimony while discussing strategy for an upcoming investigation. The Bureau's organized crime unit created an internal memo titled Godfather Effect, documenting how the films had created a romanticized template for criminal behavior. Real mobsters were performing the roles Coppola had created. The strangest example, several informants reported that younger mob members would specifically emulate Michael's cold, controlled demeanor during business meetings, believing that Pacino's performance represented authentic mafia professionalism. The fiction had become an instruction manual. Law enforcement officials approached Coppola during the late 1970s, asking him to consider the real-world impact of his work. The director listened but refused to change his artistic approach, arguing that blaming art for criminal behavior was absurd. Fact number 18. Coppola mortgaged his home to complete the film. During post-production, Paramount placed a financial freeze on the project. The studio had already spent beyond the approved budget and refused additional funding. But Coppola needed money for music scoring, sound mixing, and final color correction, essential elements that couldn't be compromised. Rather than accept Paramount's demand to rush the finishing process, Coppola mortgaged his personal home in San Francisco and used the money to pay for post-production work. He did this without telling the studio, quietly funding crucial elements of the film with his own money. The gamble was enormous. If Part 2 failed commercially, Coppola would lose his home. His wife, Eleanor, supported the decision but later admitted she was terrified. They had 3 children, and Coppola was risking their stability for a movie the studio barely supported. The film's eventual success made this risk seem justified, but the financial pressure nearly destroyed Coppola psychologically. During the final months of post-production, he suffered panic attacks and insomnia. The weight of knowing that failure would bankrupt his family created constant anxiety that followed him through every decision. When Part 2 won Best Picture, Coppola's first thought wasn't pride, it was relief that he wouldn't lose his home. Fact number 19. The final shot almost didn't exist. That haunting image of Michael sitting alone in the Lake Tahoe compound, surrounded by emptiness, reflecting on what he's destroyed. It was filmed after Paramount declared the movie finished. Coppola had already delivered the final cut to the studio, but something bothered him. The film ended with Fredo's tragic fate, but it didn't show the cost to Michael. Coppola convinced Paramount to give him 1 additional day of filming, arguing that without this final image, the movie's emotional journey was incomplete. The studio grudgingly approved but wouldn't pay for it. Coppola again used personal funds, renting the Lake Tahoe location for a single day and bringing back Al Pacino, a skeleton crew, and Gordon Willis. They filmed for 6 hours, capturing Michael's isolation in changing light. Pacino barely moves in that final shot. He just sits, trapped in his own success, completely alone. That image transformed the entire film. Without it, Part 2 would be a crime saga. With it, the movie becomes a meditation on the price of power. Paramount executives saw the new ending during a test screening and immediately recognized its importance. That shot became the film's lasting legacy, the image that defines Michael Corleone's tragedy, and it almost never happened. Fact number 20, it remains the only sequel to win Best Picture. The Academy Awards have existed since 1929. In nearly a century of cinematic history, thousands of sequels have been produced. Franchises have dominated Hollywood for decades, yet The Godfather Part 2 remains the only sequel ever to win the Academy Award for Best Picture, not The Empire Strikes Back, not The Dark Knight, not Toy Story 3 or the Lord of the Rings films, just Part 2. This accomplishment becomes more remarkable when you consider the circumstances. The movie competed against Chinatown, The Conversation also directed by Coppola, Lenny, and The Towering Inferno. The Academy traditionally resisted sequels, viewing them as commercial products rather than artistic achievements, but Part 2 transcended those biases through its ambition and execution. The film proved that sequels could expand their stories rather than repeat them, that commercial properties could achieve artistic depth. In the 50 years since, no sequel has matched this achievement. Franchises have grown more sophisticated, budgets have exploded, storytelling has evolved, but the Academy has never again recognized a sequel as the year's best film. The Godfather Part 2 stands alone, a singular achievement that redefined what sequels could accomplish. Bonus fact: in the scene where young Vito returns to New York after eliminating Don Ciccio in Sicily, there's a moment where he greets his family on the tenement steps. Robert De Niro says something in Sicilian dialect that wasn't in the script, wasn't approved by Coppola, and wasn't noticed during editing. The line translates roughly to, "Now life begins." It's delivered quietly, barely audible, as background action continues around De Niro. For decades, nobody, not Coppola, not the editors, not the sound mixers, realized this improvisation existed. A linguistics professor at UCLA discovered it in 2003 while teaching a course on language in cinema. She was analyzing the scene with enhanced audio and suddenly heard this unscripted moment. She contacted Coppola, who had no memory of it. They examined the original production sound recordings and confirmed De Niro had added the line spontaneously during filming. It had made it into the final cut and nobody had noticed for 29 years. The line perfectly captures Vito's emotional journey, his transformation from refugee to patriarch, his belief that eliminating his family's enemy has given them a new beginning. It's completely in character, thematically perfect, and utterly accidental. De Niro doesn't remember improvising it, but there it is, hiding in plain sight, a ghost in the machine of Coppola's masterpiece. The Godfather Part 2 was supposed to be impossible, a sequel that improved on perfection, a commercial product that achieved art, but through chaos, compromise, and stubborn brilliance, Coppola created something that transcends its genre, not just a crime saga, but a meditation on the American dream's dark underbelly. 50 years later, it remains cinema's greatest sequel and its most unlikely Best Picture winner. If these facts surprised you, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into Hollywood's hidden history. Drop a comment about which classic film we should investigate next. Perhaps because in Hollywood, just like in the Corleone family, the best stories are the ones they never wanted you to know.